Good morning. Chapter 9 of The Keeping Room by Anna Myers. Dear Father, I live now in the keeping room, sleeping on a mat near Cato. I wonder about your life in prison. Even if we win this war, even if you come home and we take down the fence around our house, we will never be the same. The boot scars will always be on our floors. The changes will always be in our hearts. On the third day after the chains are removed, I am put to work. It is the prisoners for whom I do most of my jobs, carrying food, tending to the sick, cleaning the filthy pen where they are caged. My body aches for rest, but my spirit is strangely at peace. Rawdon thinks to punish me, yet for the first time since this terrible war began, I feel calm. I am often outside now, and it is good to see the sky. Summer is gone. October breezes sweep rusty red needles from the pine trees. By winter, their color will change again to a grayish brown, and thick carpets of them will cover the front garden where the burial ditches are. Still, I will know the graves are there. One evening, when it is almost dusk, Captain Keegan calls me to follow him. I have just carried fresh water to the thirsty men, and I am leaning for a second against the stockade fence to rest my weary body. This way with you, shouts Keegan, and I trot to follow him through the keeping room door. There he points to a shelf where military supplies rest. Take the rag, he says, and the boot black. My boots want shining. I think of the boy Andy Jackson who refused to do this very same task. I long to refuse and think that I too could endure a cut on the cheek or on the hand. However, I feel certain that if Captain Keegan takes a sword to me, it will be my heart or liver that bears the slash. I want to live. At the moment, I want to live because I can see the wood box. Biddy is gone, allowed to go with my mother because the military cook did not want her in the kitchen. Still, I fill the wood box, and still I dream of using the pistol. Head down, I fetch the needed materials, then bend to shine the captain's boots. A small green worm crawls across the floor just before I put my rag to the left boot. The captain lifts that foot and squashes the worm against the brick floor. In this man's eyes, I am worth little more than that worm. When nighttime at last brings rest, I lie again on the mat beside Cato's. My body aches and my eyes are heavy. Cato is restless. He turns and turns. Then he rises. I can see him in the moonlight that comes through the windows. He sits against a brick wall and he wipes a cloth with a cloth at a small white stone. He begins to hum. Occasionally there is a word or two. His voice is soft. I cannot make out the words. I think they are a strange language, a language I do not know. I am tired but too interested to sleep. Sitting up, I listen and wonder if Cato would stop singing if I move closer. I stay on my mat, but I speak. Is it an African song? Cato nods. For they tore me away, for my misery days. Mostly the words is gone from my old mind. It be a song about a river, that much I knows. How old were you, Cato? 5, just 5 years old, holding my mammy's hand. My pa, he fight. They splits his head open. I am horrified, but I do not want him to stop talking. Is that stone from Africa? Cato laughs. This be a rock I just finds down by the mill last year. Ain't got nothing from that life. Not one thing but bits of that old song. I 'member the river some and big birds flying. Not my mammy's face, just my pa's head. 50 years I lives a slave life. He starts to hum again, but this time there are no words. I am filled with sadness. It comes to me to tell Cato what my mother has said about his freedom. I will promise that when this war is over, he will no longer be a slave. I start to open my mouth, but I do not. Suddenly, I fear his anger. I imagine that I am a boy younger than George, that my father is killed, that I am ripped away from my part of Carolina, so that the watery river becomes only a dim memory. I imagine that then I am forced away from my mother, and that later I lose my wife and children as Cato did. For 50 years, I own little more than a stone that is truly my own. I imagine that when I am old and tired, some little boy waves a hope of freedom at me. I think that I would shout, "Too late." I decide to say nothing. You gets yourself some sleeping now, Cato tells me. I lie back down. I will never hold slaves, I say to the man across the room. That be good, he answered. That be sure be a good way, young master. No, I never want to be called master. There in the dark, I see suddenly my father's face. I, who am my father's son, find myself with ideas that oppose his. I have encouraged my sister to study. I promised never to hold slaves. Am I betraying my father? The thought unnerves me, but I am far too weary to deal with it. I fall asleep before Cato comes back to his mat.